Hey, what's up guys, it's Cher. It's been a long time since I've been on my channel, but if you guys have been subscribed to me or just I look a little familiar, it's probably because you watched my Time Traveler's Wife book review that I made 3 or 4 years ago. So obviously I had to come back again to talk about HBO's new series, The Time Traveler's Wife. This series has been interesting. Now, I watched the first episode the night it came out, Sunday at 8 Central Time, because I'm in Chicago. Yes, I have moved to Chicago. Yes, I was from Michigan, around the same area as Claire, and now I not even around the same area, but I'm from Michigan like Claire, and now I live in Chicago. And yes, I did move to Chicago to be with my current partner. You see how life works out? So watching the series has been like really exciting for me. I've been very excited for it from the moment they casted Theo James, because Theo James is my baby father. I'm gonna go ahead and say it right now, like that's my man. So I was already really excited because I know his work, and obviously the series just means a lot to me. So I will say this right now, there will absolutely be spoilers in this review, and if you haven't read the book or if you haven't seen my Time Traveler's Wife book review, you can actually watch that. It will be linked down below and maybe in the info card if I can figure out how to do that. I'm not actually a YouTuber anymore. Episode 1 came out last Sunday, and today is Sunday, and the second episode is going to come out in just a few hours. And I decided to wait on making this review instead of doing it like the night of or the day before like I used to, because I needed some time. This series, episode 1 really upset me. Like, there was so much happening in it kind of for no reason, and it just changed the character dynamics and synopsis. So I just decided to watch it a few times. So I've seen it 3 times now before giving my actual thoughts. I also made my mom watch it. I made my sister watch it. And I needed other people's opinions before I could really form my own, because I feel like mine come from someone who has read and adored the book so much that I couldn't necessarily see why someone would change it so much. But everyone has the right to their own opinions and their own feelings about the book and the way it makes them feel. So I needed to like kind of give myself a breather and just kind of decide how I feel about it without my first reaction being anger, because so much of it was changed. So that's kind of my overview. I will say I give the first episode a 3 out of 5. And there were a lot of things to like about it. There were also a lot of things to dislike about it, just because there were some really weird changes made that I was not a fan of. Just my personal opinion. There was a lot of shit in here that I didn't fucking like. But before I run into like all of the things that I hated about it, I really do want to talk about the things that I loved about it and the things that are making me continue watching it into episode 2. So the first thing I want to say is the color grading. I love the coloring of this series. Something that really gets me is coloring and lighting of a show. Like, if your show is too dark to watch, I'm not gonna watch it. That's one of the reasons I stopped watching like Teen Wolf back in the early like 2010s era. I stopped watching it after like season 3 because the coloring was just too dark and I couldn't really see the screen anymore. So coloring is a big thing for me, and I like that it feels like spring, it feels like summer. And I really enjoy that. I also loved seeing the Kimball train, because like, of course, I don't take the Brown line, but I know the Brown line. I know where it is. So I was like, oh my god, that's so cool. I love the casting. Theo James and Rose Leslie are both very good actors. I haven't seen anything else Rose Leslie is in, but she embodies this version of Claire very well. It makes her very easy to like on screen. It also makes it very easy to be annoyed with her on screen. I blame the writing. Young Henry was such a star. I loved finally seeing a big Henry and a little Henry just kind of like hang out. We didn't get to see much of that in the movie, and there's so much of it in the book that like I really hope that this continues and we see a lot of young Henry as well as older Henry and even older Henry all interacting. It was very weird but very fun seeing like 38-year-old Henry and 28-year-old Henry. I think he was 36, not 38. But that was also very interesting. Again, weird writing choices that I do not agree with. but still a great time. I enjoyed seeing it. They did Theo James wrong with that wig though. Theo James and Rose Leslie actually have really nice chemistry. You can see it in like bits and pieces of the show. Like there were like certain moments, like on the first date when they were like having sex, when she was squeezing his nipples, where you're like, oh, okay, these two are really into each other. And I was really worried because Theo James is a great actor, but like a lot of times he plays like very stoic characters, and it was very nice to see a lot of life in him as Henry. And same with Rose Leslie. She's a very powerful actress. Like she takes up room on the screen, and I really enjoy that a lot. So their back and forth is very nice to watch. It's very interesting to watch because like I'm very interested in what these two characters have to say to each other. The writing is a little interesting, but a lot of it is good. One of the things that kind of was trippy the first time is when they're like talking to the camera, kind of like how I'm talking to my camera right now. Why is love intensified by absence? I am always going where she cannot follow. That was a little weird for me, but on the second and the third rewatch, I was kind of over it. I think it was just something to get used to because they never did that before. I'm wondering why they're doing that because they haven't talked about Dr. Kendrick. I don't even know if Dr. Kendrick has been casted yet. I'm gonna have to look to see if they've casted someone for Dr. Kendrick, but I'm guessing they're making this either for Alba or for Dr. Kendrick. I don't believe either of those people have been casted because I believe they want to make this like a series and not like just a one and done season. I think it only goes up to Claire and Henry's wedding. Again, I could be wrong. We'll talk about it more as we get more episodes. I'm just gonna get right to it. Whoever wrote the first episode should be fired. I'm sorry. It's just so, there were so many things that just didn't need to happen. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Like the grooming comment, like, okay, now I will say this. I personally just didn't like it. My sister who watched the series, she found it very funny and she giggled. I didn't. I flipped off my screen. Like I was like, this is so dumb. Why are they talking about this? Because the first thing that people talk about when they talk about the time traveler's wife and they feel like the time traveler's wife is quote unquote creepy, they always want to bring up the fact that Henry met her as a little girl. And even though nothing sexual happens between them until she turns 18, a lot of people, that's the first thing they want to call out about the series, which I guess is fine. Everyone wants to be a social justice warrior nowadays. But I feel like if you don't take the time to actually get to know the series and like read the book, it can come off as a little weird, but like once you actually read it, I don't think it's weird anymore. But again, I am biased because I genuinely just like the book, so of course that's just my feelings on it. I know other people are gonna have different feelings on it, but that's fine. There's something about taking Claire's character, and I think what I love about Claire so much is her youth. I love how excited she is to see Henry again. I love how considerate and understanding she is about Henry's disability, if you want to call it that. I love that she's so warm to him and sweet, and she's very understanding. She's a very understanding character, and even though she's put in these really awkward and terrible positions by being with Henry and being Henry's wife, she still has a lot of heart and a lot of youth, and she's there for Henry, and she just wants to love him and care for him. And they completely took that away. They completely scratched all of that in episode 1, and they made Claire a very immature 20-year-old who doesn't understand that her future husband doesn't know that she existed, and she gets very upset with him because he has a girlfriend, and because, you know, there's a bra in his drawer, and there are tampons and other woman things like a robe in his apartment, and she's like visibly angry and upset, and she throws a shoe at him, and it's just a very dramatic way of showing that Claire does not like Henry at 28. She loves him at 36, and that's not how the original work went. Claire genuinely loves Henry at any time, at any age, for herself and him included. So them making this giant decision to make her character trait, her number one character trait in this first episode, be anger, is very confusing because Claire is not really an angry person, and her and Henry don't even really raise their voices at each other. They don't yell and scream at each other, and the only time that they really start fighting is when they start considering whether or not they should have a baby. So to have them kind of yelling and screaming at each other and throwing shoes at just 20 years old and 28 years old, it feels very jarring. And as a viewer, why would you want these two characters to be together? Why would you want them to love each other and be together if from the moment they have their first date, they're yelling and screaming at each other? Like, Claire gets visibly upset and like angry with Henry because he swallows too loudly when she says that they're a couple. Claire, sweetheart, you just told him that you're his future wife and he doesn't even know your last name. Like, and it's weird too because in the books he literally tells Claire, like, when we meet for the first time, I'm not going to know who you are, so I want you to live your life, I want you to date, I want you to hang out, I want you to have the best time possible, I don't want you waiting around for me to show up in your life, I want you to live life to the fullest. Unfortunately, Claire does not do that. She just waits for him. But Henry lets Claire know, like, hey, I'm not going to know who you are because I don't tell myself about things in the future. And that happens in the book. I don't know if that technically is going to happen in the series. I don't think it is because Claire has such a big negative reaction to Henry having a girlfriend. Yes, he should have told her, like, hey, you know, I'm seeing someone. Is this a date? I just need to let you know that. But he doesn't because he's also an immature, brash 28-year-old. One thing I will say about Henry, book Henry and this Henry, is that he is very, I won't even say immature or childish, but he doesn't really care. Like, he's just trying to live his life. He feels like he's not going to live very long, so he's just trying to have a good time where he can. And even though he's in this really like toxic relationship with Ingrid, like, it didn't stop him from pursuing Claire. And when he did meet Claire, he broke up with Ingrid like the very next day or same day. So I don't know what they're gonna do with this, because it was just so weird to see her so angry. And then when older Henry appears, she's like, how do you become him? And he's like, you, Claire, you make me the 36-year-old that you're in love with. Like, you have to work with young me so then I can become this version that you love so much. And instead of it kind of clicking for Claire, she just becomes angry at the idea of Henry leaving her to go to her older self. And she calls her older self a bitch. And she's like, why does she get to have you and I don't? And it's just such a weird jump that I genuinely just do not understand. I just don't know how you can read the original book and be like, I feel like Claire should be angry. I feel like Claire shouldn't like Henry. She shouldn't like him as a person. She should think he's an asshole. Where do you get that vibe? Like, that does not actually exist. Like, Claire has never thought of Henry as an asshole. So for them to make such a big character jump, it just feels a little stupid. It doesn't feel like that's something that should be done. Just character-wise, it feels very off. And my sister, who has never read the book, was like, she's overreacting big time. So it was nice to know that other people think that Claire had a very big and somewhat stupid reaction. I don't know who made that choice, but they shouldn't have. And I feel so bad because, like, the first time I watched the episode, I was pissed. Like, I was so angry. Like, I felt like very insulted. Like, I'm like, this is not the Claire that I know and love. If you haven't noticed, my last name is Tamble, and I took that from De Tamble because I love this book so much, and it's such a huge part of my life. So to change it so rapidly, just like, I've never seen that before, where they like change a character. Yes, I have actually. They did it with Ron in Harry Potter, where they made him kind of like an airhead and kind of stupid in the movies, but in reality he's really smart in the books. They kind of did that to Claire, where like Claire's like a very sweet-hearted person, and then they just made her like an angry, immature little girl. I just don't understand the reasoning for that. And I watched Rose Leslie, like, she actually says that she enjoys Claire's anger, but like, why? Some people say that anger is to let you know that someone in your life has crossed a boundary. And I agree with that, but Henry doesn't know Claire at all. So why wouldn't he have a girlfriend? Why wouldn't he be sleeping with women? Why wouldn't he be living his life like a normal person? Just because Claire decided that she was going to wait for Henry doesn't mean that Henry was going to do the same thing, especially because he didn't know that she existed and that she was out there. And I just find that very confusing and very jarring, and I don't like it. I hope she's nicer in the next episode. I'm gonna watch because I love these characters, and there were so many moments, specifically with Henry and Theo James, where like I felt myself tearing up, like watching this and experiencing the time traveler's wife in a new way. And he's so compelling, and the scenes between Henry and Claire in this version are still very compelling, and I can't take my eyes off the screen. I just don't understand why they're happening so like violently, and why there's so much anger between them when they just met. I think it's weird. I'm sorry, I don't like it. I think it's weird. Anyway, I did love seeing Henry with younger Henry in the museum. I've always wanted to see that on screen. One thing I did notice is that this Henry isn't as nice to the younger version of himself. He's very to the point. He's like, we're gonna steal, we're gonna beat up people, we're gonna break into places, and we're just gonna have to live this life, you know? He's very to the point, and I kind of understand that, because this Henry does seem a little bit more fed up with life, and the older version of Henry seems a lot calmer and a lot sweeter, and he's just like, hey, you found the love of your life now, you need to try to die as slowly as possible and live as long as you can, because we don't know how much time we have. So I do like it. I do feel like it's going to head where I need it to, so I can enjoy it all around. But this very first episode felt like a punch in the face. Like, it felt very like disrespectful, because like, why the fuck are they acting like this? This is not who they are character wise. Like, Audrey Neffenegger wrote a story where it's like, I feel like I can speak for Henry and Claire. Like, Henry would never do that, or Claire would never do that. So then seeing this version where they're doing things they absolutely would never fucking do is very jarring, and I don't like it. And I'm gonna keep saying that until they start acting the way I want them to. I'm sorry. One thing I really liked, it's so subtle, but we do focus on Claire's mom for just an instant. When young Claire is like running through the house trying to get Henry clothes, they do a close-up on her mom, and she's like looking out the window, and she looks very sad. And we know that Claire's mom is manic depressive. So hopefully we get to see Henry go to Claire's home for Christmas. I love those chapters in the book. I find them so interesting. I love hearing about Claire's family and like family dynamics and stuff. I love Nell so much, and I loved Henry's relationship with Nell, even though we don't see that much of it. So I'm excited to see that in the future. Like, I'm excited because I do feel like The Time Traveler's Wife needed more than a movie that was like an hour and like 45 minutes long. I do feel like this is something that should be a series. I just don't want them to make bad choices with it. I'm like, you have great product already. Don't steer off too far. And they've already made changes. Like, it's filmed, I think, mostly in Vancouver, New York City, and then there were a few scenes that were actually in Chicago. So that's already a little bit weird. But I just hope they don't steer too far off character-wise. Like, keep my characters the same. You can kind of change the story, like the way his blood time travels without him, the way his feet now time travel without him, even though it's no longer a part of his body, it still travels. That kind of scares me, because that means, because those pieces of him are like dead, technically, right? Those pieces of him are dead. Does that mean his dead corpse is just gonna show up in Claire's house one day? Why did they do that? Why did they do that? Like, it just, they're making so many choices that I just don't agree with, and I'm scared. I'm scared for it, because like, I've never seen Doctor Who, but you can tell that they're taking this in a more like science fiction-y like way. Like, there's something that I really don't like, is that like when Henry disappears now, he whooshes and like your hair is blown back. But like, you'll be standing where I am, and then he'll be on the side of you, like over here, like where I'm staring, but then your hair will swoosh back from the front of your face, not even from the side. Why did they do that? Like, that's not necessary. One thing I liked about the movie is that, like, it's very subtle when he disappears. Like, he just slowly just disappears and he's gone, and then his clothes are just on the ground. In this one, it feels kind of violent. Like, when he when he comes back and he, like, falls down the stairs because his body just decided to put him back on the staircase. Like, it was just weird things like that that just make it more violent and, like, slightly confusing, that I just don't like and I don't agree with. But I'm still gonna watch because I do like it. I want to see more of young Henry. Like, there's a scene in the, like, on this season of The Time Traveler's Wife where he's running towards his mom and he's like, mom, mom, and you can tell, like, this woman probably does not know that's her son yet. But I'm really excited for that scene, and I know that probably never happened in the book. I'm gonna reread it as I'm watching the series as well, just to, like, fact check some things. But I'm scared and devastated. And the thing about The Time Traveler's Wife is that the story is devastating. Like, it's sad. Like, when I did my first book review, I cried, and I got some of the facts wrong too. And I was just, like, very sad. And I reread this book probably, like, 4 times a year. I'd say once every season. So, like, once every winter, once every spring, once every summer, once every fall. And I do feel like I know the material like the back of my hand. But still, like, seeing it in this new version, I'm like, do I need to fact check this real quick? Like, I'm, like, going through the pages, like, trying to double check things. But I am very hopeful, and I do feel like this is going to be very good for me and my feelings, because I've always felt like we needed another version of The Time Traveler's Wife. I personally wanted to see it with people of color, but, like, I'm biased. I always thought it would be very interesting if we told the story with, like, black main characters instead of white ones. But Theo James, he's fine, so it's okay. It's fine. But I am very excited. I am very hopeful. But I do feel like there were just so many things that they did that didn't need to be done. Like, it was just weird, you know? I wasn't feeling it. But I'm very hopeful and I'm very excited, and overall I give it a 3 out of 5 stars. Originally I gave it 2 out of 5 stars, but once my initial anger, like, went once my original anger went away, I bumped it up. I gave it another star. There, like I said, things I don't agree with: the blood time traveling, the feet, the tooth, weird. The anger on the first date, weird. But I am very hopeful, and I'm very excited to see things that are in the book that I've never seen on screen before. So I am hopeful. I just think some of the choices they're making are a little bit off, and I don't think the characters would actually act like this, even in a more modern version of The Time Traveler's Wife. And the grooming joke, whoever wrote that, go to hell. Go to hell. But I'm gonna cut this review short. I'm trying to keep them short and sweet this time. But I will see you guys next week with my second review, and leave your comments below. Like, I want to know how you guys feel about this version. It's just iffy for me. It's iffy, but I will continue watching because I do want a season 2 if they're planning on doing that and not doing the whole thing just in one season. I am very hopeful and I'm very excited. But let me know your thoughts. Your thoughts are just as important to me as me rambling about mine. Please leave a comment down below. I can't wait to have conversations with you guys because I know my family is sick of me talking about this movie, this book, this series for all my life, quite frankly. So leave me your thoughts below, and I can't wait to talk to you guys, and I'll see you next week. Bye!